Hello friends and welcome to LudoNarraCon 2025. Danny O'Dwyer here from Noclip with another panel. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Andrejs Klavins and Ernests Klavins, two of the fantastic creators behind the Golden Idol series, which I have been enjoying loads of over the past couple of months. They have a new DLC coming out, and these games are very much about storytelling in a very non-linear, interesting, puzzly way. So I'm excited to jump in and talk about this. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me, first of all. First of all, tell me where you're based, because not many, I don't know many games that come out of the country that you're based in. Where are you, and what's the game dev scene like there?
Yeah, so we're from little country Latvia, Europe. I'm based in capital of Latvia, Riga, and Ernest is from nearby town, Ikšķele. I'd say the scene is relatively small here, but it's actually picking up in last few years. So we're finally finding some footing, I'd say.
How did you both get into games development? Prior to Color Grey Games, had you much experience making games?
Yeah, actually quite a lot. In my case, I started out almost 11 years ago when we created a sort of startup studio making web online games, kind of like when the Farmville exploded in Facebook scene. Then we had our local version in Latvia, and spent 7 years working in social network and mobile game scene.
What about yourself, Ernest? You're obviously on the art side of this duo. How much experience did you have in games prior to working on these titles?
I had some experience. I made some, also I programmed actually some games as part of some art projects for exhibitions and stuff like that. Several, I think earliest one was even made in some early versions of GameMaker. And I also made a platformer and tried to sell it on Steam, and totally failed on selling part, but where I didn't fail, I actually managed to make the project, which was also a huge milestone for most people. Well,
absolutely, finishing something is the most important thing for a creator in many ways. So when you guys, explain what this game is to people, when you try and describe, the genre it's in, I guess, what do you call it? Is it a puzzle game? Is it a story game? How do you explain it to people?
I quite like using phrase deduction game, because it doesn't necessarily have to be detective themed, but it requires you to arrive at some kind of conclusions and realizations and then communicate them to the game. But we also sometimes, I think, use just kind of this broader idea of this being a mystery game where solving the mystery is actually core gameplay. It's not just the theme.
Yeah, how did the original idea for this come around? Were you inspired by other games? Did this come from somewhere outside of games? Because it is, it has flavors of things like adventure games in it, but it, and puzzle games to some extent. But it is very, to my mind anyway, it's an incredibly unique experience.
Yeah, we had a bunch of influences, but for me always like the biggest one is Return of the Obra Dinn, because it just gave this concrete framework of there's this big exploration part, and then there is this formalized way how you communicate your understandings, and we were kind of curious. Like we thought like, oh, this is amazing detective experience. Where are the clones? Why no one else is doing this?
Right.
But so we said our sort of thesis when prototyping was, okay, can we do something similar, but without 3D, kind of in an isolated manner, in small chunks where you can test whether this is fun or not. And I'd say that's where it mainly came from. But we had lots of other influences. Her story, I think, was definitely a big one.
Hypnospace Outlaw.
Yeah. So yeah, quite a bit. But I think where we kind of differed was that we settled on this kind of small case by case format, how the game progresses.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that. The idea to sort of, obviously there is a macro story that ties all of this stuff together, and even between the two games as well. But each page, each level, I guess, is sort of its own distinct puzzle and story to unpack. What was the main impetus for that? Is that a sort of a production thing? Is it a pacing thing? Was it just easier to prototype in that way?
Ernest, what do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely easier to prototype and most importantly test that way, because you don't want to test all the game at once. You want to test it. So this bite-sized development, it plays into that. And, I would say that a game like this could work actually without central stories, that you simply have like as this escape room style, like differently themed these detective puzzles. But and I think on our earliest ideas was for these puzzles to be less connected. It's like there is like different time periods, so it's not as connected. But then we as we developed, we discovered that people like characters, and once they get to know characters, they want them appear again. So we kind of made scope more narrow, but also more connected. And we have
that's interesting.
Yep.
Yeah. It's interesting that people got to enjoy the characters so much, and you felt like you needed them around a lot more. You can definitely see that in the sequel as well. Was that so? Yeah, was it sort of more of a puzzle experience, and then I guess from showing it to people, you realized that they were connecting with the people they were meeting, I guess, in these levels?
Yeah, when we built first two scenarios for the first game, at that point we didn't really know the story. We just put in some set pieces, set the mood. We didn't have a clear idea. When we kind of got into this like deeper, a little more complex story of man-made in, we realized that actually kind of switching over completely might not be that great, and the moment when players on this meta level start connecting scenarios, they get this great satisfaction that these are not just like, at first they think, oh, these are isolated cases, but when the suspicion creeps in, it creates this great, I think, hooking in feeling, and we definitely wanted to retain it.
Each level has its own story as well. When you first open one up, it's all about the mystery and trying to unpack what's happening. Usually there's some sort of visual element that is, giving you some assumptions, and then, you spend the next while sort of adding to that assumption or breaking it. How did you, I guess, come to that style of level where, like, how do you, I guess, how do you figure out where the player's mind is? Like, how are you tricking them? Because it must be very difficult, in any puzzle game, it's hard to, put yourself in the player's shoes. But I find when I play these games, I can't imagine how tricky it is. Is it a lot of, are you able to put yourself in the player's shoes? Are you play testing these games a lot? Are you coming up with, are people on the team coming up with level ideas and then testing them out on each other? Like, how do you know, I guess, how quickly to unravel the mystery in these levels?
No, it's impossible to put yourself in player's shoes. I mean, you build up some intuition, but but the strongest intuition do build up that you can't intuit it. you need to always test it, because players can make some kind of assumptions or understand everything at once in a way that you didn't even expect. So we instead developed a framework that we pretty religiously stuck to when building the second game, and now that we're working on the DLCs, which is we kind of test in 3 phases. We test on the conceptual phase, where we have the story lined up, but we have just some visuals, some texts, no puzzles, or like very rudimentary ones, and then we show it to someone and observe them and kind of see how they react. And what we care for is whether everything's not super obvious, or maybe so confusing that it's overwhelming, and whether people don't feel just bored, like maybe the scene is very unexciting. We kind of try to catch, and if players notice some kind of like fundamental plot hole or a thing that we haven't thought about. Okay, go on.
Yeah, because before this concept phase, we have like lengthy and hard arguing about do events even make sense. We start with events and then we build puzzles. Because in the detective genre there is always this approach when you like devise you construct this mystery, and then you kind of shoehorn the events to fit the mystery. But events, as a result, events can become very illogical and nonsensical. That something is done very complexly for complexity sake, and we try to avoid that. But we also can fail, and the players in concept test can point to mistakes and holes in our plot.
Oh yeah, we have like our lingo where we say, okay, this is looking like a Rube Goldberg machine. Like it's like
right.
way too complex. Like you have to apply always kind of some Occam's razor approach where you think like, okay, but why doesn't just this person do this, and do they even need this weird tangent here? But yeah, and then we once we're happy with our concept, we move to what we're calling iterative phase, where we're actually building the puzzles and playtesting whether players can solve the scenario. And this is the moment where we mostly look for how satisfying it is, like whether this flow is what we want it to be. Like I'd say bad flow is when you quickly find the most exciting stuff and then you're just filling in like technical details. So the best case is that you.
Yeah, or you like painstakingly like fill in very complex puzzles that like gives you some very like secondary detail about overall plot. We want to these puzzles actually to inform about important things, ideally.
Yeah, and like amazing flow, which not always happens, is that towards the like near the end the scenario, player gets stuck and then he has great revelation and it kind of reframes the scenario, and then they have this like big, oh, now I see it. That's the ideal case. And lastly, we have polishing phase when we feel like, okay, overall this is working. Maybe it's a bit clunky in some places. Now we just need to iron out some like details and make it like flow easier. We almost always during the development make the scenarios easier than they start out.
Oh really? Yeah, they get more complex as you work on them.
No, vice versa.
Sorry.
Like they get easier because when you're building puzzles, I think you're afraid that they're gonna be too easy, which means you overcompensate on the difficulty side, and then you find how unfun it is to be overwhelmed and stuck, and then you gradually make them easier until players have this nice flow. It's
interesting to hear that you start with the events. Is it that must be a fun process to sort of pitch these unique events that happen, because so much of the joy of the game I found, in Rise of the Golden Idol, when you get to the prison level, I was just like, oh, this is great. This is like a whole other way of thinking about this, where I have to, figure out what these rooms are like. Or there's a level later on that involves, sort of an exploration of the history of this world and the different eras of its society, and all these things that are, there are templates, I guess, to puzzle games, but you're constantly, it seems like, breaking them in the way in which you approach those events. And obviously the sort of ultimate finale to the game is its own, totally different way of playing the game as well. Is that just like a fun way of producing these levels, is to think about, okay, this is a whole new type of puzzle, a whole new different event. Let's see if we can add in some different ways of exploring these levels. Like, are you getting more confident, I guess is what I'm asking, in terms of the how weird you can get with some of these setups? Or is it a case that when the player plays the game for a while, you're more confident that you can sort of test them with these different concepts?
I really like quote from, I don't know which game developer, who said you want to surprise players, and I think in order to surprise them, you kind of have to build up some like expectations, kind of build up some rhythm, and then throw something else, throw a wrench in this box. And I think one thing that we realized was that all players really love filling in character names, but at some point it may turn that there is like it creates this very similar feel to all scenarios, and so we always try to find some kind of sort of theme or central vibe, which is both puzzles and the topic, like prison, you mentioned, which asks you now you have to do this thing which you haven't done before. We kind of will try to lean into it, and let's see how it goes. Which sometimes creates polarizing scenarios. Like sometimes they are scenarios which some people really love or really don't like, because it's also a thing that we've just accepted. Puzzle like solving ability differs a lot, and things that some find easy or difficult vary from person to person.
And our approach to puzzles also probably not always we achieve it, but we strive to achieve it, is this principle that we don't want them actually to be very complex to solve once you understand principle behind them. So we don't want to build like progressively more complex like hat puzzle or logical grid puzzle or liar's puzzles that can become really complex. But more like once you understand, oh, this is this, you can actually relatively easily solve it. But you need to shift of perspective to understand the principle behind the puzzle.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now that you mention it, there's not many. Are there some things that you don't do, like you mentioned, people lying? Like, I don't think anyone lies in any of the levels. They may say something that you are interpreting incorrectly, but are there certain sort of rules to how characters behave within the puzzles to help the player in that regard?
No,
they lie.
They totally lie, but we, if it's essential to solving, we try to signpost it somehow, like signal right. that it might be so players don't feel like very misled. I guess one sort of like simple rule that we took from first game and you followed in second was that if there is a secret code, once you figured out it, you have to be able to apply it and get to a result like in a couple of seconds. Like we don't want you to write out, transcribe for, I don't know, 30 minutes long text. Yeah,
what other lessons did you learn between the two games? A lot of you might call them quality of life improvements or stuff, how you sort of get the words. They're automatic in the second game, and the first one you have to do a little bit of sort of click hunting to get them. But what sort of lessons did you learn in terms of storytelling and in terms of puzzles between those two games?
Okay, Ernest, what are thoughts?
About story, we kind of discovered that we tried to make story different, but there are some samey elements, and so we are in risk like telling same story again and again. Therefore, for DLCs, actually, we approach it to address it by inviting our other content creators coming with their ideas for story. So it's these concepts are we are involved in development, but concepts doesn't. Initial concepts doesn't come from us. About the puzzles,
I'll add to this. It was already when we were in very early stages of the sequel. We had just finished second DLC of the first game, and we felt that if we now keep just building on our own, we might be repeating ourselves. Like we were scared of losing ability to surprise people, and that's the moment when we attracted more other sort of mystery sphere creators to join our team, and then we had to kind of navigate this interesting space where you want them to be able to tell their stories, to express themselves creatively, and do something new which we haven't done, but at the same time to still keep it with our sort of like quality, our signature style, to align so it all makes sense together, which was honestly really challenging. Yeah.
That's interesting. So who were these collaborators that you brought in? Were they other developers or were they writers?
We received something like 60 or 80 resumes when we announced that we are looking for creators, and in the end our main criteria was have they created some kind of mystery content before.
Okay.
It was kind of like the most important thing, and as a result we chose Bill and Danny from Sydney, where they have escaped this podcast, which is an escape room at the same time.
And Souls is Murder podcast, which is like sort of like a detective roleplay podcast.
Yeah. Then Marcus and Nathan, who also the only other, I think, mystery podcast, which is called sort of like role-playing murder mystery style.
Oh, really? A sweet murder museum, it's called.
Yeah. And then lastly, Will from Great Britain, who had built a small detective game, which we really liked, Signal and Echo, I think. Yeah, it was. And we looked at all these projects and thought, okay, these people, they have experience. They will be able to teach us things, and we want more of that. So yeah.
Another big difference. Sorry, go ahead, Ernest. You go ahead.
Oh, I just don't tell that. All of them, I think, had more experience than us in detective genre.
It's a good idea. Bring in some experts, if you're going to have everyone add to the creative soup. So were they predominantly working on DLC stuff for Rise, or were they involved in the development of the events and levels in Rise as well?
No, they worked a lot in Rise. It was that part was kind of challenging because we wanted to divide chapters among everyone, but at the start we did sort of trial project with everyone just to see whether like we can actually cooperate and if the result is good. And they all very leaned in to creating something like exciting and big and chunky, but couldn't be like very essential part of the plot because we hadn't figured out plot yet. So it resulted in the second chapter of Rise, which is the reason why scenarios that are kind of like lengthy and sort of more maybe individual, which connect only like a bit afterwards together. But yeah, and then we actually asked them, hey, can each of your teams like create your own DLC? Again, kind of to try to get more unique, interesting perspectives.
Excellent. So did the sort of overall story of Rise of the Golden Idol sort of emerge from the distinct levels that you had created? Like how early in the process of making the sequel did you know what that arc of that big story was going to be, or are you sort of filling in the blanks as you're making each level?
We had a shape of it. I'd say we had variants of its shape. We had agreed on certain things for sure. Like we knew we wanted it to be 70s. We wanted to take this distance from previous game, and there were sort of like themes and ideas that we wanted to express with it. But we weren't super sure exactly how we would get there. That we partially discovered. Though we don't exactly do like, okay, let's build a scenario and see where it takes us. We are trying to make up the big structure before it.
Ernest, are you going to say something?
No, that just want to say that we changed stuff midway in development to make it more simple and act some storylines, because we understood that it will be too meandery and also impossible to finish on time. So it's
yeah. In my mind, always great comparison is this Portal game story, where in development they actually had like many of these balls, like the minds, AIs, and in the end they cut them all and they just had story about one, and it turned out much better. And we cut significant portion of game that we hadn't planned out, and I think it's much better for it.
It's a long game. Like there's enough game in there for sure. It's interesting to hear that there was even more, because the more I kept playing it, the more I couldn't believe how much was in here. Obviously that's puzzles, but also that's distinct art as well. There's so much in both games. And Ernest, there was a big sort of direction change between both of the games. I'm very interested in what sort of prompted the change in art style. To me, was the era in time, had that anything to do with it? Because I can definitely see how the Case of the Golden Idol's art style feels very at home there in that sort of era, and Rise also feels at home in its era.
Yeah, we experimented with various art styles. I was pretty sure that I will abandon pixel art, because pixel art, it's not this painted style. It's more natural for me. It's also huge played huge role in this choice. But also pixel art is actually harder. It requires this pixel perfection, and if it's higher resolution image, it's actually more work consuming for me at least than this painted images where you can like paint some with broad strokes, some on important parts, and it's kind of this style definitely is more natural for me. One of the inspirations was Disco Elysium's approach to their art actually, but goal was to kind of different but same, so that there is like these distinct characters, but in the slightly different technique, made in slightly different techniques, and it's also easier to animate with puppet animation tools like Spine that we use.
I think it also is connected that success of the first game kind of gave us more confidence to sort of do our own thing. I think to some extent we chose pixel art for the first game because it is a bit of like this lingua franca of indie games, and also we wanted to attract point and click retro game enjoyer, kind of invoke this feeling of nostalgia. But now we felt like, okay, now people know what's called Nidal. We can do something our own.
Right. The similar to point and click games, especially more modern ones, you guys have a sort of a tip system that's in the game that will nudge the player if they get stuck. But I love your system because you sort of have to go through this list of sort of personal responsibility before you get to the tip. You sort of challenge players to challenge their own assumptions first of all, and to really consider the story and the characters and what they know, and then even you get a small little breathing exercise before the tip is finally delivered to you. Can you tell us a little bit about the idea behind that?
So one thing that we when playtesting a lot, we noticed like a set of very typical traps where people fall into. One is they become super sure about one thing and they never challenge it. So that's why sometimes taking a break, like going to bed and returning to scenario next morning really helps, just because you slightly get out of your system this conviction that this thing is true for sure, and you can reevaluate stuff. So yeah, reevaluating things we realized is super helpful. And secondly, this fact that people sometimes I think it's a downside of our system. People sometimes input what they're calling typos. You put like, instead of Peter Batley, Peter, and then you say, oh, okay, something's wrong, and then you kind of drop your absolutely correct idea of solution and go in a different direction. And then you later notice your Peter and put in Peter Batley, but now you're already in somewhere else. We really wanted to kind of help them out. I think our philosophy, I think indie games, in a way, when they rose up, there is this idea that you are, in a way, slightly rebelling against AAA, where at certain point everything's like super guided, like you very tutorialized. Everyone's always holding your hand, fearing they're gonna lose it like at any moment. And then I think with indie games and with all the like Souls games came this idea that okay, we can actually throw you in there, and we trust that you will find a way, like this trusting attitude, and this is what we try to do. Like I would say Rise is slightly more tutorialized, but overall both games just throw you in and say like you can do this. And hint system is kind of doing the same. Yeah. It's we're trying not to be very patronizing, I guess.
So about tips,
Ernest, are we going to add something?
Yeah. For first game, when we introduced tips, our thinking was that we want to, because if you get stuck, you Google it in a adventure game or in a direct game. So we want some place where players can go before they Google, because once you Google, you are surrendered. You won't try, and you Google once, and it's more chance you will Google next time.
Right.
As for this blessing game, it was supposed, it's 70s, human potential movement, people believe in telepathy and stuff like that. We want to kind of satirize that, and at the same time, it's also like riff on these meditation apps that we have today, like when you breathe in, the guided meditation, stuff like that.
We originally had built, and actually they were written already, like the hint system for Rise is a self-help book by a fictional author, and all the hints were expressed through some kind of this author's platitudes about well-being and things like that. But these texts were super fun, but they were much less functional as hints, and they were very lengthy. Yeah. And we decided, okay, now we're going to be very practical about the actual content of hints.
Excellent. So the breathing was sort of a leftover from that original idea. That's fantastic. One of the ways in which you guys, you don't tutorialize the aspect of solving many of the puzzles, but you definitely help the player with sort of gating advancement in the puzzles. It's such a smart design technique to help the player establish who the characters are first. Who are the people? What are their names? What are their faces? With that prison level, and then sort of allowing the player to establish sort of certain things, so that when they get to what is the story, like filling in the gaps in the story, at least they're not worried that they're putting they think the wrong person is the wrong name and things like that. I guess, how did you come to that with the original design, and I assume doing that allows you to make more complex puzzles, because at least the players have like a safety net that they can go back to if when it comes to the sort of basic information.
Yeah, it arrived when we were playtesting first games, this in scenario, the little mermaid, which was we were sort of like testing the scaling of the game, because we knew, okay, we can create a 10-minute experience, but if you want the game to be reasonably long, you'd have to need 60 scenarios of 10-minute right. lengths. That would be crazy. So can we make something that's maybe like an hour long? And at first we tested with like our fans and people who were like super strong in these games, and they proved that they can deal with this. But then we tested them with more casual players and realized that, okay, this is actually really overwhelming. We had only the scroll text, no other puzzles, and there was no 2 or fewer incorrect. There was only correct, incorrect, and that experience was very frustrating for them, because you don't even know if you're close to solution. So I'd say at that moment we felt, okay, this game actually is not scaling. We need to somehow add this safety net, as you said. And once we realized that people struggled with keeping all the name combinations in mind, we thought, okay, maybe it would be nice if we confirmed those once you fill all of them in. It's also a bit of nod to Oberdin. And when we realized that really resonated with players, then I think we had this understanding, okay, we need actually this kind of like stepping system where we gradually build up confidence and understanding of things, and then you use those to deal with the big mystery at hand. And this is main reason why we changed the UI of Rise, which, as any UI change is polarizing, but we're absolutely standing by, just because now we can add loads of puzzles. In the first game, we always had to think, okay, we have only this much real estate, but now we can do weird, big visual puzzles as much as we want.
Yes, new UI kind of lost this simplicity, elegance and simplicity of first game, but it kind of seems more clunky, but it's that for a reason. Yeah, it allows for more content.
Yeah, it sort of helps establish what you're trying to figure out as well at the start. You sort of glance down at the bar and you're like, oh, okay, this time we're trying to figure this part out. That's interesting, and I'll keep an eye out for that. It's one of the things I adored so much about both games is each level was like a little Christmas present. Like, you didn't know what was going to come next. You didn't know what expectation was going to be flipped on its head, or something you thought about a character. It was funny, you mentioned like the assumptions that people have. I actually found, after completing Rise of the Golden Idol, that I started to consider my own assumptions in my real life. Like I'd flex that muscle cognitively so much playing the game that then I was like, wait a second, do I not like this person because of something I assume about them? Or, it almost like helps you retrain your brain a little bit. And because of that, I've got a bunch of levels that are my absolute favorites. Do you guys have any favorites levels that you either favorite ones you put together or ones that were particularly challenging to put together that you're proud of? Do any stand out in Rise of the Golden Idol?
Yeah, Ernest, you go first.
Oh yeah, no, we even had tier list, but now since I'm just worked so much with DLCs for the past half a year, I kind of blanked out on this one. Because I can name them from DLC, but
I definitely have you. I'm extremely happy with the dance level. We didn't create it. That was purely Marcus from Aurelius Whitlock Museum idea. Just because it does something completely else, it has its own kind of mood, and that it also resonated very positively with players. So I'm very happy with how that turned out.
Yeah, complex, which is like this murder in apartment complex, is players definitely liked it. I have soft spot for the murder in the retreat with Zen Garden. Maybe I actually kind of like finale because I like wrapping things up.
Finales are always super hard. I'm also happy. Like we worked on it a lot. We reworked it many times, and I think the moment we in early versions we really struggled with it, and once we it's a small fun fact, but originally finale plus chapter 5 was meant to be just one big scenario. That was some kind of big fantasy of ours, but then we realized that's not realistic, and we thought, okay, no, this is going to be like 4 super small scenarios and then one big finale. But then these 4 super small scenarios in the end weren't that small, and some of them is actually one of them. The pre-finale one, Steelside Warehouse, I think, is actually the longest one in the game. In a way, one of my favorites, though it's polarizing one, but it's not so strong thematically, but it's quite confusing, and it strongly suddenly returns to where the game started. Someone said that when they noticed Steelside Warehouse title of the scenario, they kind of got goosebumps that, now we're returning to start of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I had that same impression as well. Ernest, you mentioned the tier list. Was that a tier list based on your own preference, or was that based on you guys sort of looking at the playtests and seeing which ones were the ones people enjoyed the most?
No, it was our own preference that we did to kill time in plane or airport or something like that.
But that preference, it is influenced by seeing reception, noticing reactions. One of my favorites from the original game is the cultist scenario, but that scenario is very polarizing. Many people really hate it because it has these folksy weird riddles and rituals, and they trip up people, and then they are very annoyed.
Yeah, it's important to understand that we haven't played this game. So
yeah, that's a good point. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Your favorites are the ones that were easiest to design, maybe. So, I mean, we're on the eve of the next DLC coming out for Rise of the Golden Idol. I think it's a great game for DLC because, once you've once you've captured people with this type of puzzle game, I think they're just delighted to come back again and again. What can people expect from the next DLC pack?
Okay, balance. But
it's a hard game to talk about, I guess.
Yeah, it's especially this one because it's okay. I think with this one, the creator Will, it's created by Will. He tried to lean into sort of a topic of gurus and cults and the kind of like all the weird things that intermix in cults, which is often being mystical, fraudulent, abusive.
Setting is middle of the century, about like 50s or 40s, and it's in like modern Lemuria.
There is this political background of it, but at the same time, it's I think it's a pretty hard DLC. I'm not super sure, but we are like original games DLCs. I think the mid scenarios were very hard. Here we are trying to slightly make them more streamlined, but still they are more challenging than base game.
Excellent. Well, from playing the base games, players are pretty good at these. You've taught them well how to decipher these intricate stories and characters. So yeah, maybe difficult is good. Andrejs and Ernest, thank you so much for joining us here at LudoNarraCon 2025. Best of luck with the DLC launch. And if people want to check out the games, you can pick up Rise of the Golden Idol and Case of the Golden Idol. Available on Steam. Anywhere else?
On Netflix, a gaming platform like the Play Store and App Store, and also on all consoles. Yeah, I mean it's everywhere.
Yeah. Exactly. Pick it up. Awesome. Thanks so much for checking in on this panel, and stay tuned for more from LudoNarraCon 2025.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Awesome.